Welcome to Peaking. Today I'm joined by Tom Irby, a seasoned entrepreneur with over 35 years in business. Tom has a deep experience in court reporting and legal services. He is the co-founder and CEO of Skribe AI, an Austin, Texas-based legal tech startup founded in 2022 that offers a non-stenographic AI-powered alternative to traditional court reporting for depositions and legal testimony. It addresses the court reporter shortage, high costs, up to $800 an hour, and inefficiencies of legacy methods by integrating with Zoom to capture, transcribe, and analyze testimony. Skribe reduces costs by up to 50%, delivers video sync transcripts quickly, and ensures court admissible records, making legal proceedings more accessible and efficient. Tom, welcome to Peaking.
Thank you, Wyatt. I'm really thrilled to be here. I want to, when I was younger, the word seasoned really didn't bother me much, but the older I get, when I hear the word seasoned, I'm like, I'm not sure about seasoned. It kind of, it kind of starts to sound a little bit different as you get a little bit older.
That's funny. I have always grappled with kind of having a baby face, as they call it. I look younger than I am typically, and it's not great for business. Someone
I
sees
hear
the.
you. I hear you. Like I said, when I was, in my 30s and somebody said seasoned or 40s seasoned, it was kind of a warm, welcoming sort of word. But now that I'm in my early 60s, it's like, seasoned starts to sound a little bit like old.
Oh no, experience. Did I say that?
Experienced,
Yeah,
that's
maybe.
right. That's right. Let's not put old around it. Let's just say experienced. It's all good.
Wisdom, wise. Maybe wise is worse.
No, no, I'm just playing. I'm just playing. It's just funny to hear words.
Absolutely. So definitely want to get into Scribe and more about what you're doing. I think it is valuable to hear a little bit about your story, where you came from, and how you got here. In a summary of some sort, how would you describe your early career and how you got here?
I mean, it's an interesting path. It wasn't, I mean, like a lot of people, it's not a straight line at all. Um, I kind of think of my career in as three big chunks, and there's other little things in between those big three pieces. But so the first big piece of it was in the PC industry. I spent about a decade with a rocket ship of the company. We went from startup to about 500 million. So I got a lot of exposure to a dynamic, hot industry, very forgiving, at least on the first half of that experience. And the second half, it was a real challenge as it got more mature. And then the second piece of it was a small startup telecom company that I started and then I sold it. And then the third piece of it was really by accident. I ran into a opportunity to buy a court reporting firm. Never been in legal space before. Was coaching a woman that owned the firm. And long story short, I ended up buying it from her and ran it for about 7 or 8 years. And that's really kind of the backdrop for what has now become Scribe about a decade after I sold the court reporting firm.
So jumping back to the startup you're a part of, that was a PC company,
That's right.
and they were acquired, or you
No,
went public?
it actually it ended up going away. I mean, it got up to 500 plus million. It was we were crosstown rivals with Dell. Michael Dell was actually a customer of mine when I started that job right out of college. I ran the first store that we opened. This was when we were like in the 10 to 15 million range. And back then it wasn't the internet didn't even exist. It was mail order. And so we had a mail order business and I opened the first retail store and Michael Dell was one of my best customers. He was I don't know if he was actually in school at the time. If my memory is correct, he was not in school, and he was really kind of an enthusiast around networking, early office networking. And so he'd call up and say, I need this, and I'd stack it in a corner, and I'd just stack it, for a week or more, and then he'd show up and write a check, and off he'd go. And so fast forward, 6 months, a year, 2 years later, Michael became a competitor. So we were the more mature company, growing really aggressively, and Michael was this upstart, college kid that everybody underestimated. And Michael he pretty much mirrored our model, with the exception we kind of went heavy into retail as much as mail order. He went straight up mail order, which evolved to just pure digital play. And the retail side of what we did ended up being our demise. And we never went public, so we were privately held all the way through. Michael went public, so Michael had a war chest of cash, and so he could survive downturns. We didn't, and we had a thinner cash or capitalization sort of aspect of the company. And so, like in those two scenarios, it's really kind of a good entrepreneurial lesson that, in dynamic, fast growth industries, it's inevitable you're going to have big challenges that can be a near death experience. And so the difference was Michael had some of those near death experiences, but he went public, so he had cash to kind of withstand it. We didn't, and the near death experience ended up being a death experience. So we grew it to 500 plus million, and then it went away because
Wow.
the retail side of it ended up kind of pulling it all of it under.
If the founders or business owners could go back, do you think they would have went public, or how would they have done things differently?
Definitely, there's several. Hindsight's always so much easier.
Of course.
I think real time as it was all going on, most of the leadership in that company felt like we should have gone public. The founder was pretty dead set on getting to 1 billion. He wanted to get to $1 billion privately held, and it didn't work out. So that was a big piece of it. I think the other piece of it was not to embrace the retail side of it like we did, and be a little bit more visionary about, okay, from a distribution channel standpoint, mail order was just a precursor to the internet. And so the whole ability to ship things, and kind of the buying patterns that people look to be evolving to, we should have paid more attention to that and gone straight up, just pure mail order.
Did the founder end up okay? Did he have, he paid himself out well?
Yeah,
Or
yeah. Don't lose too much sleep over him. He's
okay.
fine. He's he's fine. He didn't end up with $1 billion valuation company, but him and his family are fine, and his grandchildren are going to be fine. He walked
Wow.
away with it with plenty of money. It was all of us that were there early on that have a little bit of a bitter taste in our mouths, because I was the second full time employee there, and sometimes it's hard to think back to it's really, this is a trap, and I try not to go here very often, but a decade or two back, I did it pretty frequently. I was like, maybe I should have gone to Michael. Maybe I was on the wrong team, but at the time, our team looked like a lot of the folks that I know would tell you the same thing. If you were going to bet on us or Michael, you would have bet on us all day, every day, because we were more seasoned, more mature. There's that word seasoned, by the way. Um, but it looked like we were the better probability team to make it through this big growth. Um, Michael was easy to underestimate in those days. But he's done amazing. I mean, I'm sitting here with a Dell, monitor, and everywhere you go, Dell is he's done amazingly well. And I think what he did was, there's so many different lessons inside of it. But I think, as I kind of reflect on it, man, what a blessing for me to drop into that, the beginning of an era, technology era, and being kind of the epicenter of a lot of different things in this market. Dell and CompuAdd, that was the name of the company, were right at the forefront of all those things. Apple was just a little company. Microsoft was really just kind of getting off the ground. It was historic from that perspective. I'm real grateful to have had that foundational part of my career.
I Sorry about that. Had a bit of a mic issue. Jumping back to competing with Dell as it started. Is he is you don't hear too much about him. He's a good guy, I assume. You always had positive
We don't,
interactions with him.
no, we don't want to go down that path. We really don't want to go down that path.
No worries. That's funny.
Yeah, he was. I mean, you can fill in the blanks, Wyatt. I mean, we were
Sure.
we were crosstown rivals. We were not that different in age. He was a socially awkward in that part of his career, and his and we did not we did not get along all that great. When he stopped being a customer and became a competitor, it was just like what you'd think.
Yeah, just
Yeah,
ruthless
but the
competition.
other thing, and we talked about this a lot back in those days, is if you use the analogy of athletics, it made us a lot better having Michael as a competitor. It's like going out on a track by yourself versus having somebody to run with. Michael gave us a speedboat to chase, and it benefited both of us for the better part of the decade. Um, I mean, if you asked him now, he'd probably go, "Wait a second, who was that little company that that would, now that he's, multi-billion-dollar company back in those days, we were we were pretty fierce competitors."
It seems like that's the brand of entrepreneur that succeeded in that generation, at least in the big three there, Michael, Bill, and Steve
Yeah,
Jobs.
yeah.
Uh, they're kind of all thought of that way. I don't know if you think of Bezos and Zuck and Elon as the same temperament or reputation, but I'm sure they're ruthless competitors as much
I'm
as
sure
anyone else.
it's probably a common thread for most highly successful entrepreneurs. I mean, it's an interesting topic, by the way. I, I've been in a handful of companies that had kind of this dynamic sort of growth. And I've business coached quite a bit business owners that have been in dynamic growth. And the one thing you see in common with founders that are of that variety is they have this hair on fire, relentless sort of drive that can be unmatched, and at times can be destructive.
Hmm.
And like when I think about the old PC days with CompuEd, Bill Hayden was our founder. Everybody's just holding on like crazy to his coattails, just trying to keep up with the guy. He would show up on Monday mornings and just hair on fire, like shot out of a cannon, like at 7:45 Monday morning, like on top of everything that was kind of front of mind Thursday, Friday, the week before, like not missing a beat, running into the first part of Monday. And the tendency you see, or the pattern you see with folks like that are these, the visionary, traditional visionary sort of folks, is they're kind of like those ships that go through the ice. They're cutting through ice and they're leaving all this debris behind them, and so the company is like following this guy or this lady or whoever it is cutting through the ice, and on the back end you're just trying to keep it all together and as best as you can. And so the more people you get behind one of those visionaries that can kind of pull together all the pieces, it's essential, because if you don't have those key pieces in place, it ends up being way too much debris on the backside of it. And in that time frame, the PC industry, the in the initial part of it, it was so forgiving. I mean, you could be a sloppy business operator and just have so much business coming at you that it was forgiving. And then as time went on, it became more and more important to be cleaner about how you execute.
That is so interesting. I think hard times really bring everything to the surface. Yeah, you can't make as many mistakes. The story of that type of entrepreneur, that relentless personality, the debris in the wake, is almost antithetical. I think that's the right word, to all the books on leadership and organizational psychology and how to make how to be a great leader.
Yeah.
And those are the ones that end up at the top, though. It's like they don't coach you on how to be that. It seems to be just an
You,
innate quality that
you
some
know, you know,
people have.
the other thing that makes me think about why it is, we've all been in different athletic endeavors, right? And you can think you're a really good runner, and then you get kind of on a trail or a track with a gifted runner, and you realize there's a difference.
Yes.
I rode motocross when I was a kid, and I was okay. And there were some guys that were gifted, and I'd be on the same track with them, trying to do the best I can, and they're just flying by. And you see it just about every sort of athletic or hobby, and I think the same thing applies in business. Like you've just got there's people that are born with certain attributes that allow them to be more dynamic than kind of the average entrepreneur. Now, that's not to say that, a lot of people that maybe don't fit into kind of that hair on fire, extremely high achieving entrepreneur can't be successful. I'm not saying that at all, but I think typically the very, cream of the crop, the ones that achieve the biggest sort of accomplishments in business, kind of are a different breed.
Yeah, there's something outlier about those ones. I think
Yeah.
a lot of entrepreneurs are capable of building a $1 million business. I think it's a 5% or maybe it's only 1% that get to a million in revenue, but it's still a large number when you think about how many people go into it.
Right.
But we're not all gonna get to a billion, and
And
that
that's
percentage
okay.
is so small.
And that's okay.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
exactly.
Like not everybody's going to get there, and I think the vast majority of people don't get there. But it's fun to watch the ones that get there, and it's fun to be on a team with somebody that gets there.
Yeah, that would be really fun. I really appreciate your athletic analogy because
I knew you would.
I have a race next Saturday and it's part of the pro circuit, and so I will be on the course with professionals, and they're gonna finish about 5 hours ahead of me. And the bike and the run are loops, and so I'm gonna get passed by the
Yeah,
best in the world multiple times.
yeah, yeah. I honestly, I think it's the analogy really rings true because and you're training like crazy. You're doing everything you should do, and you're going to finish with a really respectable time. But these other folks are like, they're just different breeds, you know?
It's so different. So you finished the PC adventure, and then you started a company in telecom. How does one do that?
Well, I mean, so this is where the early on I said, it's not a straight line. So when the PC business, I could see the writing on the wall. The latter part of the decade, I was with the PC company. Either it was going to go away or I was going to go away. And I had a wife. I have a wife, and I had a small child at the time. And so I kind of took things in my own hands. I have this is it's a funny business to make reference to because most of the people that hear this are not going to know what payphones are. But um, my older brothers owned a wholesale gas company and convenience stores, and one of my brothers I was talking to pretty frequently about, hey, this isn't going to work out. The PC things, I've got to do something different. And back then, wireless wasn't a thing. Cell phones, anybody that had a cell phone, it was hardwired into a vehicle, and it was very much just an affluent thing. It was not a commodity at all. And so payphones deregulated, and it became like a vending machine, but instead of selling food or candy or drinks, it sold phone calls. And so my brother told me about these stores they had, and these people are just making a fortune on these payphones. And I thought, well, at least as a bridge, I'll put out some phones, have some pocket money to kind of get me to my next gig, so to speak. And so started putting some payphones out. And long story short, over an 11-year period, I ended up with 741 phones
Oh my
in, in
goodness.
7 states, and chased a couple chains around a bunch of states, and ended up selling that company at exactly the right time. I mean, it was one of those. It was probably the best timing of anything I've ever done from a business and career standpoint. And I'll give you a little bit of the backdrop on it. So we've got these phones all over the place, and so you're driving around and you're dealing with these locations. And I was I we had a location down near the University of Texas, and I was at that convenience store, and to that point, you never saw people on cell phones anywhere. And I was standing there, and all of a sudden, a college student walked by on a cell phone, and I kind of paused, and I was like, this is kind of different. I'm not sure how to interpret this. Is this good or bad, or how do I? And 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 the best analogy I have is if you've ever been, by the sink in your house and you see one ant and you go, oh my God, there's an army of ants, behind this one ant. That's kind of the sense I had was, oh my God, this is the first of what is going to be everything. And so I don't remember the exact timing of it all, but to that point, I was fairly content running this business because it was a good lifestyle business, um, great quality of life, having a young kid. Um, but when I saw that, I immediately started thinking in terms of, I got to sell it. What's the value? Who are my prospects? How do I start planting seeds in those conversations? So instead of just prospecting to get more locations, I started prospecting with strategic discussions with other operators that were in the same space that may have an interest in kind of growing into the markets that I had, and ended up selling that business just in time.
So 100% you made the decision because you knew that it was going to be trouble ahead.
I'm telling you, as we're talking about this, why I get goosebumps about it. It still sends chills up my spine on how that played out. Because if I wouldn't have been there, who knows how it would have played out. If I hadn't been there, hadn't have seen that, and kind of started the train of thought that I started going through, if the timing would have swung a year, there'd be a dumpster full of 741 phones, or a landfill with 741 phones. The fact that I was there when I saw it and I had the thoughts that I had and took the actions around it that led to an exit that wasn't a retirement exit, but it was significant.
Sure.
Like it was a significant exit. Um, like I said, it was the best timing thing I've ever done in my career.
That's incredible. Usually timing is a bit of a luck of the draw. You don't always have the
Yeah.
intuition to time things right.
Well,
Sometimes it's just
the other thing is that nobody even knows you're in your generation, especially. You've probably never touched a payphone.
a few
It,
times.
and so, like when I talk
Yeah.
about the second piece of my career, I usually refer to it as telecom. I don't even want to mention that it's a payphones because payphones are like there's the dinosaurs and then there's the payphones, and like people are like, What are payphones?"
No, I grew up listening to the radio. We didn't have a TV, so I can appreciate technology that isn't around anymore. We
Yeah.
used I've used a payphone a few times, but you definitely don't see them much anymore.
Well,
You
the
know,
other thing back then, the way that the use case was pagers became a thing. So you had this little device you'd wear on your belt, and if somebody wanted to talk to you, they would literally get on a phone and they type in their number, or they'd call you your pager number, and they type in their number. You'd pick it up, and it'd say, here's a number to call. You'd pull off the road to a payphone, plug some quarters in it, and call them on the payphone. That was the precursor to having cell phones. That's how business people managed their communications, was a pager that then led you to a payphone.
that's incredible. How did you collect coins from 700 plus payphones?
It was a pain in the ass, I'll tell you that. It was really difficult. So we were owner operators, and in the Austin market, we did it all ourselves. So every other week, I had a route, and the other people in the company had a route, and you'd drive around, and you'd go to the phones and you'd dump them into a bag. And by the end of the day, you had, bags and bags and bags of coin in the back seat, and you took them to the bank. And the markets outside of Austin, we did reciprocal agreements, and it ended up being my exit was one of the guys we had a reciprocal agreement with. There was a guy that had other markets, and you would just find somebody that did what you did in Houston or Dallas or name fill in the blank the city, and you just would send them keys, and then they would collect and put it in the bank, and you would just kind of do the logistics that way.
That's incredible.
You know,
So
they don't even count coins for the most part at banks anymore. But
yeah,
we literally had a four wheeler, the big warehouse looking four wheeler, and we would put all the bags on one of those four wheelers, push it into the bank. And the banks knew us so well, we would literally go right to the back of the bank behind the counter where all the tellers are and unload it right at their coin machine and leave it with them and off we'd go.
that's wild. So was the guy that bought it from you just SOL as we call it? Did he just
I try not to think about that too much, Wyatt.
That's fair.
He's great,
He's
great guy, but I mean, yeah, as good as my timing was, his was bad.
Yeah, timing's a crazy thing because it sounds like you had an educated decision on when to sell. A little different, but real estate's similar. Like we were in Oxnard, California in 2007, and my dad sold our house for he bought it for like 250 and he sold it for 700. And then the market crashed and we were looking at housing prices when we started looking for houses. I looked up that old address, and it had been 20 years since we sold it for
Yeah.
700, and it had just got to 700 again.
Oh my
It took
God.
20 years for their buy to equal
Yeah.
out again because it just cratered after 2008. You remember that, obviously.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that one was, I believe, luck. I don't think he had any insight to the
Yeah. That
mortgage
one, those are
prices.
hard to see. The real estate ones are kind of tough to see.
Yeah, but if you see someone walking around with a cell phone, kids are the answer. Kids are the trends. That's my theory about the Cybertruck. All people, over 30 think the Cybertruck is just awful. But when you see a Cybertruck drive by kids, they are so excited. They think it's so cool. So
Yeah.
I think he's onto something.
The other thing it just occurred to me, and it'll lead into the scribe conversation in just a bit, but like if you think in terms of the first decade of my career in the PC industry, I got to be on the bad side of disruption. I mean, we built the company to 500 million, and then we went away because the distribution model was not what we anticipated. So there was disruption there, and there's hard lessons around that. In the payphone business, I kind of had in all of my in mind kind of pretty consistently, this is a technology, all technologies change, and it's not a matter of if, it's when. And so try I think my eyes were more open to the prospects and the idea of what disruption might look like. And so I saw it. And then if we go back into what was next kind of in that three big blocks of my career, the court reporting business, same thing happened. I bought this business not really being exposed to the legal industry at all. And after kind of being submersed in it, you start to look at, okay, these attorneys are going to conference rooms, court reporters showing up, and they've got these really funny machines. Like I don't even know what they do. Turns out they were invented in 1877, and they're phonetics. They don't even have. There's no letters on them.
Yeah.
There's sounds that they're capturing, and so at first it's kind of a novelty, but then you start to really pay more attention. It's like, well, wait a second, this is so expensive and it's so slow and it's so antiquated. this scares the heck out of me on technology is going to come along and change this. Like it's not a question of if it's going to happen, it's going to happen.
Hmm.
And so, in the 7, 8 years of having that firm, I was in a very similar way to the payphone business. I was reciprocating work around the country for other court reporting firms. My footprint was mainly Central Texas, but I started advertising and doing work regionally and then nationally. And so in these other markets, I would have to get other court reporting firms to cover that work for me. And I did the same for others. And turns out that's how I sold my second company as well. Veritext, who's the largest player in the space, started doing business in Texas, and we took care of their work. And that relationship became a really important one for me to develop. So I navigated to an exit there because I was scared. I wasn't scared, but you could tell technology was going to come through and dramatically change that space. And that's kind of how that one played out as well. It's interesting that the thread between all three, I haven't reflected on it in a while before today. It's been a while, but there's a very similar pattern all the way through around being on the good side or the bad side of disruption and having at least some ability to anticipate or look around corners of what you think's coming next.
So what was that next business? You were a court reporting business where you hired stenographers?
Yeah, in the court reporting business that we owned, we contracted with stenographers and videographers. We were just kind of the middleman broker for litigators that had depositions. We would do all the coordination, get the contractors, get everybody together. They'd produce the product of the transcript. We deliver it all out, and we'd invoice, and we just wash and rinse and repeat.
And how did you get into that? How did you buy that business?
Oh, this is a great story. Um, so I'm business coached a lot. I spent about 20 years coaching business owners in this area. And the previous owner of the core reporting firm was my coaching client. And I won't get into too many details around this, but I decided I wasn't going to work with her any longer. And so I met her for a coaching session, and I said, listen, here's the deal. I'm either going to fire you as a client, or I want to buy your business, one of the two, but I really can't work with you anymore. And it was a tough conversation, which is another I think coachable moment is don't lean away from hard decisions. Hard decision. There's this expression I love to use: hard decision, easy life; easy decision, hard life. Lean into the hard decisions, and they pay off. This was one of those hard decisions where I had a coaching client that just wasn't working, and I wasn't going to do it anymore. And so I had a hard discussion with her about firing her, and I ended up buying her business and sold that business. That's led me to Scribe. And so, anyway, it's kind of interesting how all these dots connect behind you, but in front of you, it's a little bit of a mystery.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, that's amazing. All right, so you got out of the stenography brokering. Did you
Right.
sell that so you exited from that? How's that buyer doing?
Well, Veritex was a buyer, and did $1 billion last year, so they're killing it.
Okay, so they're doing fine.
They're
So
they're
they're
killing
probably
it.
investing in Scribe.
Yeah, I mean, I think the legacy business models, what I would call the old court reporting firms, the legacy business model still has about 90% of the market share. So they're still thriving, but they still are embraced or bolted on to court reporting and videography. There's an erosion of that that's taking place that Scribe is playing a part in, as people learn that hey, you can really carve a lot of cost out of it. You can get a lot of faster workflows. There's a lot of benefits to embracing newer technologies than the court reporters have.
So where did this idea come from? Or maybe it could be a result of a lot of other startups at this point where the idea's always been there, just the technology hadn't caught up.
Yeah, so really this is the genesis story for Scribe. And being in the startup phase, I get to tell the story pretty frequently. So Carl Seelbach and I are the founders. Carl Seelbach is a defense attorney here in Austin. He owns and operates a law firm, 34 employees, has done hundreds of depositions. I had the court reporting firm for 7 or 8 years. Carl and I met back in probably 2012 or 2013 when I had the court reporting firm. Um, and we went to lunch, several times, and we kind of hit it off pretty early around this common concern or thought that, the legacy court reporting industry and the way that whole thing works is just broken. It just doesn't make sense. And so the more we talked about it, we started challenging each other about, well, if we think it's broken, then what would a modern version look like? And so we started having these conversations. So I sold the court reporting firm. We kept having conversation periodically, but it was never quite right. We'd back of the napkin it, and a lot of it was Uber inspired. We were thinking, okay, get rid of the agency, but keep the court reporters and have workforce that you're managing. But we're like, it just never was quite as exciting as we wanted it to be. So, and then COVID came around, and so my non-compete expired. COVID came around. Carl started doing depositions all remote. And there was an event that happened with Carl where he showed up at a remote deposition, and he always had a court reporter and videographer because he videoed everything. And so he shows up, and the court reporter shows up, and he said, "Well, are we going to have? I need video as well." And she says, "Well, we don't have video, and I'm not authorized to push record on Zoom." And so Carl's like, "Wait a second, you can't push record?" She's like, "No, I'm not authorized to. I'll have to get in touch with the court reporting firm. They'll have to get a videographer to join the call to push record on the Zoom call." And so Carl lost his mind, rightfully so, and spun up a Zoom event, sent everybody the links. Everybody jumped into his event. He pushed record. The court reporter did their own thing, and after that deposition was over, Carl and I have been talking about this for at this point probably 7 years. Carl calls me, I think driving back from his deposition, and I mean he is like like just hair on fire, just spitfire mad, but at the same time super excited that I've got it. I know what it looks like. The concept is getting clear. I know exactly what it's going to do, what we can do, and so that was the first domino, so to speak, of where we went from an idea that we were talking about that we knew had legs, but we never could quite put it together, to okay, it's got legs, and now let's build out the concept further. And so that would have been probably in 2021.
So what was that initial concept?
So the initial concept was, let's partner, and it's kind of where we landed. Partner with Zoom, build an application around uh, a Zoom ISV partnership where you enable these litigators to self-schedule, show up to a Zoom event, boot court reporters and videographers out of the room, drive the cost down. When the event's over, deliver everything in a modern app. You don't have to wait weeks to get something. Within an hour, you get it. Be able to do video clips, use AI to chat against it, and start working towards a modern version of capturing testimony that eventually becomes a pure software play. Right now, it's kind of a tech-enabled services. There's still there's still people in the loop. We put a notary in each of these events to swear in the witness and kind of reside over it because the market's just not ready for going from court reporter, videographer to do it yourself. There's kind of an in-between step is where we believe we are now, and that is, we still have a little bit of a white glove thing that we do by providing the notary in the event. But that's what we've done kind of on our MVP and our launch, which we launched about a year and a half ago.
And this is purely for depositions, not anything in court.
That's right. That's right. We're optimized for remote. Um, we're going to do in person. We're not optimized for it. And courts, we're going to get to courts. We're just not starting there. Our MVP is depositions, And even more narrow than that, it's personal injury and it's the plaintiff side is really where we focus our marketing and our outreach because it's the biggest pool of litigation. And the plaintiff side, as opposed to the defense side, plaintiff sides, the way they get compensated is totally different. Plaintiff side is contingency. They don't get paid unless they win. And so every dollar they save is more they get paid on the back end. So they're very motivated around cost conversations. Defense attorneys, for the most part, get paid by the hour, whether they win or lose. So if you save a dollar, it has no real impact on what they make. They're not as motivated there. So anyway, that's kind of where we've launched.
Personal injury attorneys are the outside perception is pretty funny. They're just like bulldogs of business. Every single town's got the billboard with the big dog in town, the personal injury attorney.
Yeah, yeah, it's always entertaining. Now that I'm, like we're developing out, building out this business, every city I go through, I'm always entertained to look at the billboards.
We got one guy. He's everywhere in the Denver metro area. He's got probably 50 billboards, and it's
Yeah,
just a
yeah,
big guy. Just
yeah,
it's big old face and body on every single billboard in town.
yeah, yeah. It's entertaining. Sometimes a little sketchy, and kind of the what their messaging.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, that's kind of the market we're going for. Now, eventually, we can't do everything at once, but eventually, we're built for all litigation. It's not just personal injury. All all legal testimony, whether it's litigation or in insurance, the platform's designed to capture legal testimony. We're just our entry point is kind of the what we just walked through.
Yeah, that makes sense. So going from traditional court reporting to building an AI-powered legal tech startup is some would call a big leap. Uh, What would or what's been the toughest hurdle in bridging those two worlds, and how has your business background helped you navigate it?
That's a great question. I mean, I think the this is the first software company that I've been involved in, so that within itself is significant. And I mean, I think the other thing that a lot of folks that have started business understand more than others is, the whole concept of going 0 to 1 is way more difficult than going 1 to 2 to 3 to 4. 0 to 1 is a massive undertaking, and so I think that was a big part of it. And transparently, for me personally, I'd never fundraised before. And so being in an organization where you carry the fundraising responsibility has been a big adjustment for me. I'm really I love operations across an organization. I love all the aspects of a business and understanding how they all work together, and solving challenges and puzzles inside that, and building teams. Fundraising is like this big avenue that you kind of this big road you go out on, and like you're like all you've got to spend you've got to spend 90% of your time doing fundraising, and then the joke is you've got to spend the other 90% of your time running the business. And so, that's been the biggest challenge.
And what does that fundraising experience look like? Are you mostly angel investors? Have you worked with VC firms, or how has your experience been raising?
So our initial fundraising was very much family and friends, like most. Evolved into angels, some angel networks, and then we've got a couple of VCs that have jumped in the last year or so. We're kind of in this between place of seed that's transitioning to Series A. Series A will be exclusively VCs. We're trying to round off the round we're in now with mostly angels. A lot of attorneys have invested. Attorneys that we speak to about Scribe, and before we launched the product, and this is something that I think most people probably understand, but I want to just kind of express or emphasize it. um, Discovery is so important before you sell a dollar, before you sell one thing. Spend as much time as you can allocate speaking to people that you think are interested in what you're building. And don't just tell them what you're doing, listen to what they say and ask questions, because we spent the better part of 6 months in discovery, and Carl and I were probably on 220 to 230, 40 calls with attorneys, paralegals, and judges. And we would go into these calls with the goal is we're not selling anything here. We want to learn. We want to validate. We want to maybe find some things out that we didn't understand. And so there's some threshold questions that we asked everybody to get good data points about, like how much of their business is remote, how many depositions they do, how many attorneys they have. But then it would be, how does this look to you? What about pricing? Is it usage or subscription? What about this feature or that feature? Would you consider this, or is this a challenge? So the value of that piece of what we did, I think, was enormous, because when we got to launching, our vision and ability to know kind of what we were coming to market with and kind of what the feature roadmap looked like, I think was relatively clean as a result of all that discovery.
That makes complete sense. I think there is a tendency, and anyone that's listened to past episodes has heard me say this before, but tendency to build product and then try to find customers. And you want to find customers, figure out what product they want, and then build the product.
Yeah,
And if you're not, or even a service, you need to know what customers are looking for. You can't
yeah.
just assume there's going to be buyers for something that you might enjoy building, or you might think that there's a market for.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. That's right. The other piece that I think it's a real, it's kind of our one of our secret sauce really is Carl Silbach, my my founder, co-founder. Um, he's a seasoned. There's this word again, seasoned.
Yeah, you can't help
Um,
yourself.
yeah, I know, I know.
He's
He's
gonna be
done.
mad about that. He
He's
doesn't
done.
like being called seasoned.
I know. Well, he's a lot younger than I am, so he's not going to take it. He's not going to take
Okay.
it. He's done hundreds of depositions. He is our client. So his ability to understand kind of what the market's looking for, and the discovery, validate and ask some things to help him kind of around the visionary piece was priceless. And Carl, like if you I don't know if you're familiar with Traction, the EOS Entrepreneurial Operating System by Gino Wickman. They use visionary and integrator kind of as the classic leadership structure, where you've got somebody that very much is a visionary on where the market's going. Carl is hands down that guy. Carl is the one between he and I that is super involved in kind of the feature roadmap, what we're building, what the market is looking for a year or two or three down the road, and that's his role. My role is really around um, implementation and execution and making sure that the vision is accomplished, among other things. So having that complementary set of founder fit is super important too.
Yeah, it aligns exactly with what I was thinking about next. You bring complementary strengths, you and Carl, business acumen and legal expertise. He is your user research, which is amazing. It's such a tremendous advantage. How do you balance decision making? And has there been a time where your perspectives clashed, but it led to a breakthrough for Scribe?
I mean, so decision making is, we're going on a decade or so of knowing each other, and it's remarkably smooth. I have a vast respect for his understanding of the space and kind of the vision piece of it, and he has an equal amount of respect for me around execution organizationally, and kind of how to lead in that way. And so it doesn't mean that we don't challenge each other, but I struggle to think of too many times where we've gotten crossways. It's and that's rare. Now we've had some other people that we brought into the team that we got crossways with, but they're no longer here. So, but Carl and I, we've managed to figure out kind of a super good working relationship.
And the technical aspect, the product building, do you have a CTO or a head of product?
Yeah, I've got a head of product, CPO, Corey Bryant. Brian is really a key part of what we do. I mean, he wears several hats, in typical startup sort of mode. He's holds down his core skill set is really around the product. He gets to kind of tap into the visionary side of what Carl's doing, and then put it down and make it real in terms of, okay, here's the feature roadmap, and here's the priority list on how we're going to get there. And when technology challenges come up, he's the one that goes up, often figures out, okay, here are the options. How do we tackle this one? So he's held down the CTO seat as well, and then he also is holding down the marketing seat. And so he's helping on the branding side, the messaging, the posting, and pulled together kind of a fractional group of marketers that help us, and is orchestrating kind of how that piece of it works. And as we scale up, it'll get more and more narrowed down to product for him. But early on, he's been able to hold down several seats, and it's been a pretty amazing thing to watch is how effective he is. And you need somebody that like this on the team. And I say like this on the team. There's a difference between somebody that is visionary and somebody that is kind of integrator like, and somebody that is product like. They're like totally different animals. And figuring out, okay, how to work with and accept um, the way people work has been a big challenge, because like we were talking about earlier, that boat that charges through the ice and all the wreckage behind it, that sort of stuff drives a, a product guy nuts. They want everything in detail done to the nth degree, where hair on fire running fast is kind of the other side of the spectrum. So a lot of my role is to figure out, okay, how do I get the best out of both worlds as we're building the product, and making sure when we do have conflicts, we come out of it, uh, excuse me, with an understanding of what's best for the business.
That's
Excuse me.
two things come to mind there. The first is the sales guy going out and promising this incredible thing that they go back to engineering and they're like, all right, get it done.
Yeah, that
Engineering's
never
like, ah,
happened.
that's not possible. Oh,
Yeah,
great. Get it to me by tomorrow.
yeah, yeah,
Figure it out. And then the other is kind of seats on the bus, and not everyone is meant to be in the driver's seat, but
yeah,
everyone has a place. And I think when you have a skill of being able to put people in the right place, that is a recognizable skill. And finding it yourself is difficult. I think people in my generation are really trying to figure that out, and I think every generation probably has struggled with that, but
yeah,
ours just likes to complain about it a little louder, perhaps.
yeah,
We
yeah,
trying to figure out, what am I meant to do? And I think once you find that, success finds you. If you search so hard for success, but aren't in your, this term, zone of genius, or whatever you want to call it, aren't doing something that you are passionate about, or you think that you really can make it in, you're fighting a really uphill battle.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, the other thing is a challenge. When we were talking about 0 to 1. Once the way the way an organization, and this is just from my seat, and kind of how I'm running the business. The way you look at 0, and the way you look at 1 from an organization, the way you look at 2, 3, or 4 is typically vastly different. And so understanding that, okay, it's okay to have a flat organization early on because you don't have the resources, and it's the most efficient way to operate. But understanding when you need to start getting more structure to what you do, there's a little bit of nuance inside that, because there's a lot of things at play there. One is resources, flat out money. Do you have the money to hire somebody? Are you at that point? Are you planning for it? The other is these people, these employees that you have early, do they have the domain or skill sets to really accomplish the next layer or level of where you get to? In the first decade of my career, when we went from, 3 guys running a business to having 500 guys doing or $500-600 million of business and having 1,000 employees, the dynamics of the first group of people there and the last group of people was unrecognizable. Um, and it's honestly, I think it's probably the most challenging part of a high growth company is keeping up with that discussion because you can if you figure out okay where to kind of level up on skills inside the organization, there's carnage along the way. I mean, it's unavoidable that you outgrow certain people in an industry, and that's fine. If you're more of a level growth company or even modestly growing, it's not as big of it doesn't scream at you quite as loudly when you are underskilled in certain parts of the organization. But and it's one of the things that Michael Dell did that I think is a great lesson. When he was I'm just using round numbers, these are probably not exactly right, but when he was in the 500 million range, when he recruited people that had been in $5 billion organizations. Every time he filled big seats, he didn't fill them with people that had seen what he's seeing now. He filled it with people that had seen the movie ahead of him. And so, like when you're building a high growth company, it's super important to make sure that that top layer of leadership has kind of a depth of skill and acumen that's not for this stage, but for two or three stages ahead. And that's it's easy to conceptualize that, but to see it real time is a bit of a challenge.
Yeah, you see that. I mean, even in the startup world, I hire founding engineers and they want previous founders. They want previous founding engineers. They do not want an Apple engineer. They do not want someone from Meta. And then
Yeah,
you see it in VC and PE and then board of directors as well as once the company is no longer under founder control, they typically replace the founder. They put in a CEO that's managed companies much
yeah,
bigger, and
yeah,
some people might be real good at getting a company to 1 million, or they did well. They got it to 1 million. They got it to 10 million, but 100 million is a whole new jump. That's a whole new suite of challenges, and I
yeah,
think that happened in my last company I was at too. The two founders got it to I think 10 or 25, and they just couldn't get it past that, and they brought in another
yeah,
CEO from a very large firm, and he helped triple the revenue, and then the PE bought the company and he was on his way and he went out to start
yeah.
his own firm. So
And it's
yeah,
and it's hard. I mean, I've lived that. In the PC business, CompuAd, I was leading the growth side of the business for the first several years. But when we got to like that 100 million range, I was still in my 20s, and the founder made the decision to go out and hire IBM and TI and executives and create a whole new level of leadership and take the ones that kind of got them to the 100 and put them down under that. And that's a tough pill to swallow, even though it was the right decision to make. It's still there's ego and it's a difficult transition, and very few people make that successfully. It's really hard to survive that. Usually, it leads to an exit for whoever's getting moved down.
no one gets fired for hiring IBM. I heard that quote. That
Yeah,
used to be
that used
the
to be
business lesson.
that's right.
Um, I had a few more questions about Scribe. Did you have a hard stop here?
No, I'm good.
Awesome. So with the platform, and any AI integration, there's obviously nerves about things getting wrong or analyzing things. Sounds like you're able to analyze testimony in minutes, is kind of what you mentioned. Um, what is the tech behind that? Do you customize the most recent LLM? Are you using multiple LLMs? What's been the biggest challenge in making it court admissible?
Yeah, so we don't have our own LLM yet. We do think out in the future there's an opportunity there to have one that's testimony specific, um, but not yet. I mean, coming to market, we really felt like we're going to stand on the shoulder of giants more than kind of reinvent things. So, we've done a lot of integrations to this point. Um, Zoom being probably the most significant. As far as kind of how we approach AI, it's a very sensitive subject. Like, yeah, and you've probably, heard or seen, some of the references inside the legal space around hallucinations and people kind of getting in trouble for leaning too heavily into AI. Everything we do is uh, none of the testimony ever goes into the model. So if we were in a deposition now and we're capturing this testimony, it would go into we're partnered with ChatGPT. We've looked at others and we're kind of agnostic there and we reevaluate that. But it goes into a licensed version where it's all sandboxed in for that particular deposition. So none of it goes into training the bigger model. So nothing confidential ever ends up, out in the big AI world. So that's how we've approached it to date. I mean, I want to make sure I get to did I miss, what was some of the other questions you had inside that?
Just the tech behind it. Have you customized the models in some way? I guess having it localized is one aspect of that, and then just the challenge of making it court admissible.
Yeah, so the admissibility piece really comes down to how we navigate. This is way down in the weeds, so I apologize, but there are rules out there, and just like you'd imagine, legal space. There's rules on capturing legal testimony that you have to comply by, and these rules are civil procedure rules, and they're at the state level. So every state has their own rules, and then for federal cases, there's federal rules, and in these rules, they're really of around capturing testimony. You can capture it a couple ways. One is stenographic or using a shorthand reporter and all that's spelled out. And then the other is if you don't use a court reporter, it's called non-stenographic, and that's all spelled out. And so, with regard to admissibility, every state we do business in, we host depositions in, we go through a process where we research the rules, we make sure and update all of the terms and conditions and the notices and everything that is part of the experience that all the parties have to agree to so that it complies with that state. Once we do that, it's admissible. We've complied to the rules. It's all admissible. AI never really plays a role in that because what's captured in the audio video in our scenario where we're non-stenographic, the video is the official record, not the transcript, not the words on paper. In a stenographic scenario,
Hmm.
words on paper is what's the official record. Non-stenographic, it's the video. So the video is the only thing we certify because if there's ever any question, all you have to do is hit play. If you get to the third hour, the 10th minute, and there's a question about a question and then an answer, what was really said there? Did anything mess that up? Well, just push play and you can hear it yourself. And so we really think that kind of the non-stenographic approach and where video is the official record is the smartest way to go because I don't know about you, but like if I want to really see kind of what testimony looks like, I want to see it. I don't want
Hmm.
to read words on paper because there's inflection, there's nonverbal, there's all sorts of things that can happen with the words on paper that you can't really pick up on. So that's how we kind of approach.
So for the AI aspect, the AI is pinpointing critical moments in testimony, like a witness slipping up. Perhaps what would be a surprising way an attorney has used Scribe's tools to perhaps win a case or save time?
So the AI piece of it, I'll give you kind of now and kind of where we're going. So an example of how AI has really driven a result. This is a real live example. Attorney in San Antonio had a case in the morning and a case in the afternoon. Same a witness in the morning, witness in the afternoon. Same case. Takes deposition in the first one. On the break, the AI produces a rough transcript. He's able to take that transcript, search for key moments, create video clips, goes into the second deposition after the break, uses those video clips in second deposition super effectively. That's velocity in workflows that's unheard of in this space. The normal scenario around creating video clips is a bit of a tangent, but I want to give it for context. The normal scenario with law office and creating video clips is You schedule deposition weeks out. You have the deposition and get it delivered weeks after that. You review it and you mark on paper, hey, these are key moments. You send that to an outside vendor or an in-house tech person. They round up the video. They get specialized software, and they figure out, okay, this is the video. They create it. It's hundreds of dollars and it's hours and hours and hours. With us, you literally have the deposition, you get delivered, you highlight it, right clip, and you've got video. Right click, you've got a video clip. So the ability to kind of speed up velocity means quicker settlements, like the case I made reference to. He was able to navigate through that case super quick because he, morning to afternoon, had video clips that were high impact.
So he saved potentially weeks.
Oh yeah, easily.
Wow.
Weeks. And so that's kind of real world where we are now. The other thing that we have currently in the current version of Scribe is, and this is all post event. So post event, you get the rough transcript, you have the ability to create video clips. Using the AI feature against that transcript or that testimony is super impactful. Right after deposition, you can query it and ask any questions of it to prepare to maybe look for how to prepare for the next deposition. What questions were missed, maybe create a summary to give to your client, or maybe there's an expert witness. So right away, you can start leveraging that testimony with AI in ways you've never been able to do before. So that's all modern, not modern, but current version of what we do. Where we're going with this, which is really I think is really the exciting piece of it, is everything that our competitors, the legacy companies, do is very transactional. They schedule deposition, they have deposition, they get delivered, and they pay a bill, and that's all, and they're done at that point. What we're doing is rethinking of it in more terms of a testimony intelligence platform, where before the deposition, everything that ties to a case is uploaded into the Scribe application. You prepare better for the deposition with strategies and questioning outlines. You go into the deposition utilizing those outlines. The AI features of Scribe, you can see the transcript happening real time. You can ask questions against it real time using AI. And then post deposition, imagine the ability to not only use AI against that one deposition, but an entire case. So it could be 5 depositions or 10 or 100, or even bigger than that, an entire organization. So imagine like a Walmart or a Ford Motor being able to take all of their testimony and then start to leverage AI against that. And you can start using predictive analytics in ways that nobody's utilizing against testimony today.
Does this, you think, make attorneys much more efficient? They can take on way more cases and they're going to make so much more money? Or is there another side where it does expand access to attorneys to more people?
I mean, I think it does. I think it does both those things, because I think the latter is the access to justice, which
Yeah.
is really kind of a big part of our longer vision and passion. Is the when you lower the cost and you speed up things, there's a lot of representation that never has any representation, that doesn't have the financial profile, either wealth or the case doesn't merit it, that just get that just don't get represented. So that is definitely going to be part of what happens here. The other thing is, and we used to use this expression all the time, is our goal is to make attorneys more awesome. I don't think that ever really stuck, but it's kind of what we're trying to do here. Is we want to make attorneys be so much more impactful before, during, and after depositions than they've ever been before. And we want to be the part of the other vision around Scribe is creating a database of testimony that's the largest in the world. It's our North Star. I mean, it's our moonshot. You know, that's one of the biggest things we're trying to do is build. And a lot of our efforts right now, from a tech standpoint, development standpoint, is foundational architecture that leads to those sort of things.
What's the value in that?
Well, the value in that is leading us into more enterprise opportunities,
Mm.
where all the big insurance carriers, the Fortune 500, you can start going to those organizations and say, you know, Walmart, those thousands of depositions you take annually, our platform will allow you to see a trend on one side of the coast that's not shown up yet over here, or understand that, hey, this type of case looks like this type of case, approach it this way, or hey, this type of case needs this sort of expert witness. Here's a bunch of expert witnesses that fit into that sort of place. So it gives it, and it's, there's so many things you can do against it. So there's an enterprise value that means faster settlements, better settlements, and managing risk in a much more effective way.
And then what is your next goal for, this year? What are you trying to achieve this year? What are the near-term problems that you're trying to solve?
So the near term, at our stage of a year and a half into monetizing and being kind of, at the tail end of the of fundraising round, getting ready for a bigger round, we're at this point where it's like we have all these things we want to do, but we've got to get to this other round first. And so, it's a lot of hurry up and wait. So, we'd like to accelerate, adding, salespeople. I'd like to accelerate certain pieces of it. And so, that's a little bit of a challenge, but that's going to take care of itself. I think from a, I think from a product positioning standpoint, it's very much along the lines of what I just mentioned, and that is really starting to develop the concept of not being a transactional sort of vendor, but being a platform that these attorneys spend more time in. And so that piece of it is really important. Our model right now and to date has been a usage-based model. We're about to roll out a subscription component to it. So we're going to be a hybrid at some point in the next, I'd say 30 to 45 days. And that's a big piece of it. So, a lot of the features that we're building that are going to start rolling out here in the next month or two will fall into this subscription part of what we're doing.
Your engineering challenges ahead, how big is this team that's building the product, and are the challenges immense, or you just need to, like, what does the technical environment look like in terms of the complexity?
Yeah, I mean the complexity will will trend up as we approach building our own LLM that's testimony specific. As it stands right now, we're really building out features and functions as well as upgrading the platform along the way. And so those are all manageable. Again, I've got a very finite number of people on the team, so the throughput that I can build things is a very narrow pipe. I've got to grow that pipe out so I get more throughput through it. I think in the next several months that'll change dramatically. We're lining up projects and priorities pretty aggressively, and we think there's some really near-term breakthroughs around the funding side of what we're doing that are going to allow us to very much accelerate not just the growth side, but very core architectural sort of efforts to build the stage for the longer term growth.
How aggressive have you found the legal tech space to be?
Um, I mean, it's evolving pretty quick. I'm fairly new to the legal tech space. I mean, I don't really think when I had the court reporting firm, I would have considered it legal tech. Um, so really, it's the last couple of years, and I mean, I think it's probably as dynamic of a space as there is right now. AI is the adoption of AI. I heard somebody make reference to this a while back, and I don't know, I can't really fact check it, but I thought it was interesting. Is that if you look at all the different verticals of industries out there, legal has adopted AI probably at a faster pace than most.
It's just so clearly a win-win-win for everyone.
Yeah,
I think a lot of the VC money is going into revenue operations and sales, and it kind of is turning a lot of sales into spam factories. And so you're not getting a win-win-win. You're kind of more just trying to squeeze out every last drop, and you're kind of making a lot of people really mad, and that's going to
yeah.
mean the big email providers are going to start blocking the different strategies. And so the what you've described is a win for, you obviously, a win for the legal profession, and then a win for the clients, hopefully.
The
It seems
consumer
like
side.
everyone benefits here.
Yeah, the consumer side gets an amazing benefit from it all.
That's awesome. Anything else you wanted to discuss, talk about, plug?
I mean, I don't know why you've done a great job of covering a bunch of things. I don't know if I have anything in particular to go over. I really enjoyed it. This has been fun.
I agree. Yeah, I
You,
haven't had.
you gave me like this whole list of things we were going to talk about, and I was kind of like, oh, well, we're going to talk about things I'm not comfortable with, but we like stayed right in the middle of really passionate, fun things to talk about. So
That's awesome.
I really dug it.
Good stuff. Yeah, I haven't had too many people that have competed with Michael Dell on the show. I haven't had too many people in the payphone business. Excuse me, telecom. I haven't
That's
had
right.
too much exposure to the legal world as well. My grandmother was a attorney for State Farm, so she's very involved in all the depositions and claims involved. But that's kind of been my only exposure to the legal side. But yeah, it was a pleasure, Tom. Really appreciate talking to you. Would love to have you on again as you raise your next round and as you start to advance the product and get some traction.
That would be fun. Yeah, I'll take you up on it. If you've got a spot you want to put on the calendar out there, I'd say the end of this year, early next year, it'd be interesting to kind of compare, where we were and where we're at that point.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'll have to watch the episode again and then jump on right after and
Yeah,
talk about what's changed. And I love Austin, so I'll let you know next time I'm in town. We'll
yeah,
love
do
to
it,
grab
do it.
a
We'll
drink or a meal.
we'll go grab some barbecue.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
All right, take care.